So I recently rewatched The Midnight Gospel on Netflix, and it's been about a year since I first watched it. My brother had actually introduced this show to me, and I wasn't keen on watching it whatsoever at first. I thought it was a crappy psychedelic animation, trying to be weird and quirky, attempting to identify with adult humor. You know, the garbage adult cartoon shows we see all of these streaming services try to pump out to earn a quick buck. Of course, that's not to say I don't like adult cartoon shows or animation in general. I am a huge fan of cartoons like BoJack Horseman, South Park, Bob's Burgers, and even quote-unquote children cartoon shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Adventure Time, and The Amazing World of Gumball, to name a few. So initially, when I was watching the first episode, I thought, what the fuck am I watching? Like, the animation is trippy. This whole discussion about the philosophy of bad and good drugs and mindfulness and all this crap is just fucking weird. It really wasn't an average show. It isn't an average show. And I didn't realize that the scripts of these episodes were essentially from Duncan Trussell's podcast, who, by the way, is one of the creators and writers of the show. So it is essentially his podcast interviews with this weird fucking animation, just meant to be a play on what he discusses in these podcasts with guests. So like I said, it really is nothing like your typical adult cartoon. It really is an entirely different genre in itself. And in addition to this, through this main character having these conversations about life and death and essentially everything in between, we can see him slowly growing through these interviews he has with the inhabitants of other worlds. So not only is it just one episode with one podcast about one topic, it really is an entire show with a full character arc from start to finish. So to summarize, it's strange, funny, depressing, hopeful, beautiful. It covers heavy topics from profound places, and that is why I love it. So one of the episodes I wanted to talk about is called Annihilation of Joy, and this episode is easily one of my favorites and has one of my favorite lines from the show. Now, this episode dives into high-level religious, spiritual, and philosophical topics ranging from theology, Buddhism, Hinduism, hope, and hopelessness, and much, much more. And as someone who doesn't practice any of these things, there isn't any harm in discussing such fascinating beliefs, where I've personally resonated with more than one point throughout this episode. One of the greatest lines from the show to me personally is, the moment you accept things as they are, you don't need to hope anymore, because you realize that where you are is kind of okay. Now, as someone who does the most and puts themselves through so much bullshit in hopes of achieving something, essentially what this episode is saying is all of that extra work you've done essentially amount to as much as grinding in, as they put it, World of Warcraft. Now, what the fuck does this even mean, right? Like, what the hell is World of Warcraft? What does that have to do with anything? Well, to put it simply, the meaning behind this is we don't need more. Instead, it suggests that we need to accept what is there and see what is there in the company of the pain and suffering and joy that is included. I think this is in itself absolutely powerful because it's not insinuating this nihilist ideology, right? In essence, it's saying that who you are, what you are, where you are should be thought about, and you should be okay with this. Instead, everyone is trying to be something. Everyone is trying to get ahead. Everyone is putting themselves through a narrative when we can just be okay with accepting things as they are. We don't need a hope. We can live as what we are. Now, as someone who's lived in the United States my entire life, our Western minds are wired differently. So for some, wrapping your mind around like letting go of hope, which will allow you to achieve a new sense of hope, is like a brain fuck. Like, what the actual fuck does this even mean? Well, in my experience, I think over time, after I watched this, when I slowly began to choose to let go of hope, it allowed me to stop fighting struggles I'd been enduring for a very long time. Essentially, I was hauling around hope with the intention that my external circumstances would change. So, hoping to be understood in a way that people aren't capable of understanding me, hoping to meet someone that would align with this set of characteristics, hoping for people to behave a certain way towards me, and so on and so forth. So it was as though I was in this very rigid mindset where I was propelling my way upstream. Like, I was completely determined to live life by continuously forcing myself through something that was unmovable. So by letting go of this type of hope, letting go of this battle, it allowed me to quit asking life and people to be something they weren't. So in essence, I have uncovered a new type of hope. This hope is much more absolute, where instead of making life and people adapt to me, I developed a deeper idea that I can ascertain the knowledge to adapt to life as it is. All in all, hope is malleable, and this episode taught me that no matter the person, situation, or whatever, we all suffer. To accept it is freedom. We do not need to push away sadness or cling so tightly to happiness.